And this is the new rules of influencer marketing. And I'm very excited to be here with you because influencer marketing right now, in many ways, it's a golden age for what it is. I mean, before the pandemic, we were seeing influencer marketing be adopted by, more and more companies truly on a global basis. We do work in 20 plus countries around the world. And we were amazed to find in lots of places really developed influencer marketing programs over the last few years. And then as a result of the pandemic right now, it's been an interesting time because it's actually a great time to get involved in influencer marketing, specifically because right now, a lot of the other companies that were doing it aren't doing as much of it. So there's influencers that are, at home with a stay at home order with their families, with their kids, trying to figure out new opportunities and things to do. So if you haven't done this before, this is actually a great time because there's a lot more opportunities and possibilities to work with influencers that maybe would have been out of your reach previously, but right now are there. So that's a little bit of setting the stage for what we're going to talk about. And let's talk about these new rules. So I think a great way to start is I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully you can see this now. And here we go. And we'll kind of go into the presentation. And like I said, Jackson, at any point, if there's comments or questions, feel free to jump in. But I'm going to get started with talking about some of why influencer marketing in this new era is so powerful. And the first thing to kind of start with, as we frame this up, is actually understanding what influencer marketing is. I think there's this sense of, is influencer marketing like, getting Kim Kardashian to share our stuff, right? That might have a big audience, but is that what we mean by it? Is influencer marketing, does it mean it's got to be celebrities, or could it be someone other than celebrities? Is influencer marketing something that is just another form of advertising or digital advertising or social media, or is it something of its own? So our working definition is that influencer marketing is the practice of promoting a product or a service by strategically partnering with those who inspire or guide the actions of others. So the key things there is one, we need to work with people who inspire or guide the actions of others. So it's not just someone who's famous, or just someone who's noteworthy, or just someone who's a subject expert. They have to do so in a way for it to be effective, for them to inspire or guide. And then second, in terms of how we interact with them, influencer marketing is not just, basically another form of advertising. I think we'll talk about this in our new rule, but really to leverage its power, you have to leverage kind of the partnership between the brand or the company and the influencer, and it has to be an authentic partnership, and we'll talk about what that means. So we want to promote products and services. We don't want to do it quite like just an ad buy, because otherwise we could just buy an ad and get the same amount of reach. We want to partner with those who especially inspire or guide the actions of others and basically cause action or behavior to change. So that brings us to kind of some surprising and interesting stats about influencer marketing. So why is influencer marketing such a powerful channel? Well, here are some reasons. One reason is that 37% of consumers trust images created from influencers more than those created from brands or others. So one of the things that if you're selling any kind of product, it often, influencer marketing is a very visual medium. But if you have that image coming from a source that the audience already trusts, it's that much more powerful as kind of a visual marketing medium. Second, 34% of consumers have discovered a new brand from an influencer post. So another aspect of influencer marketing that's interesting is that for 1 out of 3 people, this is their discovery. This is their research. And so as we are digital marketers, we might think of, is discovery, is that done through Google search? Well, of course it is. Or is it through another mechanism where, we're going to use more traditional media? We're going to have, TV ads running. We're going to have other ways that we have kind of broad awareness of the funnel. Well, what's interesting about influencer marketing is it's also a way of generating awareness of a brand maybe no one's ever heard of, And because it has that influencer halo attached, it's much, much more listened to, even if it's the first time someone has ever encountered that brand. Another stat, 64% of those under age 30 act going to Generation Z and a little bit above Generation Z. And suddenly, 2/3 of those folks are really engaging with influencers, following influencers, and that becomes a part of their, for certainly weekly activity, but for many people, that's actually daily activity. Brings us to number 4, which is 31% of consumers, this is an important one for those of us who want to sell things, have purchased a product or service after seeing an influencer use it. So it actually becomes an extension. And for those of you who have trial programs or demo programs or sampling programs, we work with a lot of, kind of, for instance, CPG, consumer packaged goods brands that they're constantly working on sampling. Well, if you can't have the consumer sample it directly, maybe influencer marketing is the next best thing as part of your sampling program, because you have an influencer sample it and then communicate it to others. So it relates highly to purchase as well if it's influencer marketing done right. So the bottom line with all of this is that in 2020, influencer marketing consistently earns higher engagement and conversion than traditional advertising. And so one of the reasons I wanted to do this presentation on the new rules of influencer marketing is that oftentimes people are using it in the wrong way. There's a form of advertising, which, this is a very typical approach, which you'd say, okay, I have 10 influencers. They each have, let's say 50,000 in reach. Therefore, I have a total audience reach of 500,000. And it's evaluated that way, which is how you would evaluate an ad buy, right? It's okay, how many people are going to reach? What is the demographics of that audience? What is the creative in which we can engage them? What is the timing and how we engage them? That's an ad buy. At our agency, Top Global and PR Hacker, we do those ad buys all the time. But when it's a little bit different, we get reach, but we get a lot of other things with it. And that's what makes it special, and that's what we want to leverage. So before I jump into new rules, Jackson, any thoughts? You work a ton on influencer campaigns. Thoughts just from you, from working on this, and sort of how influencers are special, or any questions any of the audience has too, is a special medium compared to everything else in our marketing toolkit?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be able to be said about kind of the personal trust that influencers have directly with their audiences, and the fact that you're able to sort of borrow that as a brand, right? That goes a long way, particularly as a new brand or as the first introduction to your brand that a consumer might have. It goes a long way for them to be able to say, well, I don't know XYZ company, but I know Ben. And if Ben's telling me it's good and that it fits into his lifestyle, well, I believe that. Right, I think that goes a long way. We had an interesting question come in from Ryan Freeland, who's wondering, has social distancing increased or decreased the effectiveness of the influencer? I think that we need some creative approaches in order to kind of overcome that, depending on the activation.
Sure. Well, first of all, I would say, besides this, sort of the actual kind of point about like sort of the physical nature of what influencers can do, I actually think right now, a lot of influence of influencers is through the roof. And the reason is because there are some other factors, which is one, a lot more people are sort of online consuming digital and social media. As an agency, we find that sort of our ability to generate awareness from a digital communication is up 50% during the pandemic right now. And that affects influencers. So number one, there's just a greater sort of audience online to consume information. So that's one big thing. In terms of the nature of the influencer activations, one of the things that's really interesting right now is that typically we'd have, we would do campaigns and we'll have like local influencers attend an event or go to an event and do something physical. What has shifted is that there's a lot more openness and willingness to do virtual events and actually get high engagement and high audience reach. So this idea of maybe 6 months ago, if we had said, we're just doing an online only streaming event, but for a local area, right? For a local area, what would our attendance be? Versus now, it kind of be accepted way to engage and be a part of that. So I think what has happened is, one, if you're running an influencer campaign right now, you just got a lot more audience ready to consume what you're doing. Two, there's a lot more opportunity to be creative in other ways that would have been more of like a live event or experiential marketing, or, let's meet up at a place. So there's kind of a willingness for that. And then three, there's just actually influencers that are willing to do a lot more deals that would have had like a higher price tag that are now working on a trade, or and they're using their homes as sets with their families because they're at home, they're with their family, and they want to be able to continue to do work. So I actually think right now is a great time because there is an increase in sort of demand for what influencers can provide. And there's less competition for the supply of influencers, and that means that you can get a lot more done with maybe a lower investment cost or time cost that you otherwise would have had.
One good call out from Jim Kastner that I'll throw into the mix here, and I know we'll get to this kind of as we continue the presentation, but he said, can you talk to companies providing services rather than products? I know we're going to talk a lot about sort of sampling and physical products, CPG, et cetera. But Jim's just asking we make sure to remember the service industries as well.
Okay, that makes sense. And I run a marketing agency and an integrated marketing, global marketing agency. And so we're a service industry. So that's an important call out. And actually, there's actually, from the point of view of how an influencer can communicate an experience, there's not a whole lot of difference between a product and a service, because a lot of what we have influencers do is they kind of show rather than tell, and they can show how the service benefits them just as well as they can show a product. So we'll get into that, but I actually think the critical nature of what makes an influencer campaign successful for a brand is not whether it's a product or a service, or is not whether it's B2C or B2B. Sometimes people forget that you can do influencer marketing very successfully on B2B. What it actually matters most is that, can we sort of hone the message that we want to deliver, and that pure idea, and can we use the influencer marketing channel in its purest form to deliver that message? So that is the key determinant of success. So let's jump into the new rules. And I'm going to give you 10 new rules of influencer marketing. And we're going to start with kind of one that I think has been an evolution in getting there. And that is new rule: leverage groups over individuals. I think the old way of doing this, because this really came from sort of celebrity endorsement marketing, was you found your really big, your single, or maybe a couple, like really big influencers that you kind of anchored to them. So typically the way celebrity endorsement marketing work, and we're a big celebrity endorsement agency, so we do a lot of those pairings as well. But typically the way it works is you kind of say, what are the values and core messages that our brand wants to communicate? What is the values we want to say? And then who is that person that aligns with that best, right? And then we kind of put it together with the brand, and we use that to deliver it. And so when influencer marketing started, it really took that approach, because that was sort of the status quo. What happened now in this new rule is that actually, is there a better way to do this by actually combining bunches of influencers together? And so the idea here is that no single influencer usually has the perfect audience for what our brand, whether that's a product or service, wants to communicate. So instead, you can choose different groups of influencers to custom tailor to the perfect fit. So let's say in your audience, yes, you're aiming this, at sort of the kind of 18 to 49 demographic, but within that demographic, right, you might have some that is, more like cultural based, like we have sort of a Hispanic audience, let's say. And then we have another that part of that audience that is based, more on certain like interests or areas. We can target that with the different types of influencer. Maybe we have our product or service, might have, an LGBTQ audience. We can target that with a certain type of influencer. So the difference is, it would be hard to find the single person, right, that hits like, Hispanic, they're a subject, area expert, LGBTQ community, all of that in one person. Maybe we find that person, but actually by using groups of people, we can sort of target better. And that really became the rise of what we call, the micro influencer, which is, you didn't have to like hire Kim Kardashian to be your influencer. Instead, you could get groups of influencers that could have just as much effect or impact or reach as Kim Kardashian, but you'd pool them together in groups in different ways. And that's some of that custom tailor fit of the demographic audience you want to reach. And, in a lot of our work with a ton of, Fortune 500 companies and influencer marketing, this actually became a concept that was like a little bit difficult to seed at the beginning, but more important, people started adopting, because usually what happened is those kind of companies, and maybe you work for one of those companies, usually had like an annual planning process. And so what it was usually it was like, okay, we were either, this year, are we going to do like a Hispanic, marketing program, right? Typically it was Spanish language. And so it would have to be this whole other separate program, this big planning process, this big budget allocation. And what we started talking about to those kind of brands and companies is, you know what? Through the influencer channel, we can have an element that is, marketing to Hispanic audiences just based on the influencers we choose. It doesn't have to be this huge marketing program and lift. We can just shift things a little bit. And that's what you get through the power of groups. Okay, so here's an example of that. We did a campaign for Milk-Bone, and this was a Valentine's Day campaign, and we needed to remind people to treat their dog on Valentine's Day. And we wanted to, say, hey, if you want to say I love you to your dog, do it with a Milk-Bone. But we couldn't really activate on Valentine's Day, on February 14th, because it's too late. If we're like having marketing communications or influencers posting then, people don't have enough time to buy treats for their dogs. So here's what we did. We created a new holiday called Doggy Date Night on February 3rd, right? 11 days before Valentine's Day. And we leveraged 20 influencers. 7 were paid and 13 were unpaid to spread the word. You might be wondering, well, how much did we pay them? What about the unpaid people? So we were to the typical payment. These were small, was typically ranging for anywhere from $100 to $200 for our paid influencers. And the unpaid influencers were simply getting, 1, a heck of a lot of treats for their dog, and 2, the chance to work with Milk-Bone in a really fun, cool activation, where basically the concept was, let's have a night where you have a date with your dog and post it on social media to remind ourselves in advance of Valentine's Day how much we love our dogs. And so here's an example of some of the posts that all came from this, whether it's, we had, different influencers, Miss Molly Says and Mommy Blog Expert and other people posting, and all posting these kind of cute, cuddly moments with their dogs. And what we were able to do is we focused it on a 2-hour period in time, had 1,000 direct participants in that 2 hours on Twitter, but then that allowed us to get organic reach to 10,000 more people, because of those 1,000 people had audiences of their own. We were able to generate 77 million impressions in that 2-hour period. We generated 7,400 social posts overall, and it actually trended on Twitter. So that's a simple way of just showing us using 20 influencers, not 1. None of them were people that if you were in their audience, you would know their names. But we pooled them together to get a much greater result, and actually could get something viral trending on Twitter for Milk-Bone simply by doing that. So that's the first new rule. Second new rule. Number 2, new rule, layer multiple influencer tiers. So we're talking about groups, we're talking about using influencers together, but can we use different tiers of influencers, different sort of levels, to get the result we want? And so let me kind of give you a sense of what I mean by tiers. So this is, I just kind of pulled, so at Top Global, at PR Hacker, we track tens of thousands of influencers directly because we use them in campaigns. We have our own network of more than 10,000 influencers that we tap on. And here's some stats. So travel influencers, if we're looking at influencers with reach greater than 10,000, there's over 5,800 of those. If we go up to 100,000 level, their reach, there's about 1,300. And if we go up to 1 million, it comes down to just over 100, to give you a sense of what are the different tiers. Lifestyle is different. 2,400, if we say greater than 10,000, 600 more greater than 100,000, or 61. And likewise, I just pulled, I want to show a niche category here. So let's look at auto influencers, right? You're going to have a lot less. Again, you see the same sort of kind of cut points at audience reach of 10,000, 100,000, 1 million in how the numbers break down. So the point is this: you don't have to just choose from one of the buckets. You can use multiple tiers together. And here's an example of a campaign we did for Laffy Taffy candy. And hopefully you all know Laffy Taffy. Maybe you grew up with it. It's like the candy with the joke on the wrapper. It's got to be a corny a cheesy joke. So in this campaign, what was interesting was we actually, this was based on, in addition to being their influencer agency or their social media agency. And so we had a social media insight by doing a lot of social media listening. And that was that people were really polarized about banana flavor Laffy Taffy, meaning people love it or they hate it. And rather than sort of like try to hide the fact that some people hate it, why not embrace this as a topic and let's have a debate, right? Are you banana? Are you team banana or are you team no banana? And let's embrace this and let's use that kind of back and forth to generate a huge viral push. And we did that using influencers. So what we did to do that was we actually started this rumor that there was going to be no more banana flavored Laffy Taffy. And then went to all the places where people have polarized opinions and let them kind of say, yay, that's great, or no, that's horrible. And so you can see this. We had one tier was we did a celebrity kind of placement with Joel McHale, who used to be kind of host of Talk Soup, and you've seen him in different movies, a comedian. He was our celebrity level influencer. Second, we had a macro level influencer, and this is kind of a famous comic strip that has actually a really big audience. So we had sort of the comic strip, comic creators kind of influencer. So we had a comic leveraging kind of this banana debate. And then third, on the right side of your screen, it's a micro influencer. It's a family, and we love this. Like they actually went to City Hall in their town. They did this like a kind of social activism to promote banana flavor. And amazingly, they actually got a meeting with the mayor about this. We wanted to know what was going on. And so it was kind of a fun campaign as well there. So 3 different influencer tiers. We combined them all together in a way to get this like much greater reach and use them in different ways. It had sort of the kind of endorsement of a celebrity and his audience, but actually a lot more of the action happened that really drove results actually at the macro or micro level from all of these smaller influencers doing really authentic kind of sort of campaigns related to their audience and their medium. So brings us to number 3. And Jackson, I'll just pause there for a second because I know I have a tendency to talk a lot and a little bit fast. Any other questions or comments from your side?
Yeah, I think we're having a conversation right now in the chat about like how to determine the proper mix between like kind of top tier influencers and then micro and nano influencers. I don't know that there are a lot of pending questions per se right now, but a great conversation unfolding kind of along those lines.
Okay, sure. And one thing I would say is that one of the things you can do is that I think, is a better way to approach sort of choosing your influencers is to have a little bit of an iterative process. What I mean by that is you might start with more of the micro level, let's say first, to kind of understand what message is going to really resonate, right? You can test a lot at that level because it's less expensive to engage. And then what you can do also is it doesn't have to be one and done. Like, am I all in on this influencer or not? Meaning you start with a small campaign, you try things out, and maybe you try 15 influencers. And of those 15, what is very common we'll see is like 3 are superstars, right? Has an amazing result. Maybe another, 7 or so are like pretty good. But like can we optimize and do better? And then maybe there's another like 5 or so. It's like, yeah, it didn't really get the result we wanted. And so maybe they're not the right fit for what we're doing. So you can do that. And then when you find those, let's say those 3, now let's, if it's working, double down. Let's do more. Expand the partnership. Reward them. Send them a gift. Send them a thank you note. Invite them to come see your office. Like all of those sorts of things happen. So I guess what I would say is that in choosing the right mix, sometimes you might cast a little bit of a wider net and then sort of double down as you see results.
So I think that's a great piece of advice for Frank. Frank in the chat, he's a drop shipper. He hasn't selected a product yet, but he believes he wants to be working in the beauty space. And he's just kind of wondering like what influencers he should be talking to. And Frank, I think to your question, this is a great place to start. You can conduct some really like kind of cost-effective experiments with micro influencers. And then sort of double down on what's working and maybe go for bigger influencers in that space as well. And I would also point you, Frank, to John Dominguez's comment. He said that ROI has been much higher utilizing micro influencers. But that's largely because those influencer relationships had been nurtured through consistent communication and value share. So Frank, I'd be really looking to sort of build a network and build relationships within the influencer spaces that you want to be operating.
Well, and I think that's great advice. And I think one of the things that we can offer as an agency and just, I don't know if you had a chance to explain, but we have, I have 10 different agencies that I'm the CEO of. They're all under the top global network, but there are a few agencies in there that are really big on influencer marketing. Hence, PR Hacker is one of them, which is why this presentation is kind of branded as PR Hacker. But one of the things that I think ways that you can benefit from an agency or an agency like ours is you can leverage the relationships we already have from working on a lot of different campaigns. So we've worked with a lot of people. We know the folks that do a fantastic job in certain types. So if we need someone to do amazing photos, right? We know who to go for that. If we need someone that's like, wow, they're just going to come out with something like quirky and original and just interesting, we know who to go for that, right? We know who to go for these things. And plus, as an agency or just someone who's done this a lot, there's certain favors we can call in as well. So for instance, we've done campaigns, for Mercedes-Benz that everyone wanted to be a part of. We did another campaign for another vacuum company where we were, giving away a super expensive vacuum that lots of people wanted to be involved in that one. So also, when you leverage like relationships like we have, it can be useful because we can call in a favor. People know that if they sort of help us out on this, they might be in that, Mercedes campaign as well too. So those are all things you can do. I think develop your own relationships, but also that's some of the value that someone who's done this for a while can do. And like I said, we have, a network of over 10,000, and I'll talk about how we built that network in a little bit, that we track. We track many more than that, but in our own personal network, we have 10,000 influencers that we've worked with in some capacity in our history.
Ben, I'll throw just one more thought in here for you to kind of carry with you to the next section. Mia and John have first off both observed, I think helpfully, that frequently doubling down with paid amplification on the best content is a good way to get more mileage out of great content that's being shared. And then Mia was wondering, and it's a good question. She said, I've read that micro-influencers are sometimes trusted more by their followers, and that she'd love to know your thoughts on that. But you have to use a lot more of them. So I think that question of trust and trust being almost higher with a lower follower count in some cases, it could be an interesting topic to dive into as we talk about kind of scoring targets.
It's amazing. You queued me up. You segued into this well, Jackson. Thank you. So I think we'll answer all of that coming up in this new rule. So new rule number 3. Score your targets on key objectives, and some of those objectives are a little bit broader than you think. So here is some of the criteria we use, and here's the old way, or the old rule is to kind of use just like peer audience reach, right? Like, okay, an influencer that has 2 million audience versus one that has a 1 million audience, that person with 2 million is twice as valuable to us. That was typically the way it sort of worked. A lot of people worked to start. The issue with that and the problem with that is that there's a lot of other factors that relate to how beneficial this would be for our brand, whether that's a product or a service, that isn't just captured by that. And in fact, you could have 2 million audience with an incredibly low engagement of that audience, meaning they're not interacting, and you have a lot less result than actually, let's say 20,000 with a highly engaged audience could actually be better just in terms of reach. But besides reach, let's talk about some other factors. So one is like topic authority. Can they speak knowledgeably about the benefits of our product or service? That's a way that we would evaluate. We'd score them on a scorecard. Audience size we talked about, but we might segment that audience size, right? We might segment that because there might be certain types of audiences that we need, and it's not all about the numbers, but it's about being sort of authentic with that community and reaching enough number of people in that community. So that's number 2. 3 is audience sort of fit. So, it's not just raw size, but it's like, do they really resonate with that audience? Are they a part of that community? Because then there's a greater sort of brand halo effect from their affiliation with what we're doing. 4, visual appeal. So this is also often a visual medium, and we need this to be communicated not just in text, but certain influencers can do great visuals, and that can add to what we're doing. So for instance, as part of an influencer mix, some may be designed to like reach a certain audience and have a great fit. Some may be subject experts, and some might just be great content creators. Maybe their reach isn't quite as great, but we love them for the content that they create. And to the point, I think in the chat, if we have great content, then we could even amplify that with paid channels or something else, right, to get more reach. And then finally, creative capability. So that can be raw creativity, like just something, kind of simple, surprising, and significant. They're just good at creating that. But it could also be creative capabilities like understanding what the brand message is, right? Understanding what they're trying to communicate, thinking like a brand strategist. Some influencers are very developed like that, and some are not like that at all. So these are all ways that you need to evaluate to generate ROI. And to give you an example of what this looks like, this might be a scorecard for us, where we look at sort of key facts, the person. We might, if we're vetting this for a client, we will kind of evaluate in these different scorecards. We can kind of see here, like for this one, because this was for a food campaign, it was like, the food focus was kind of the subject area expert, and health conscious was kind of relating to the values of the campaign. And we were looking at like the engagement of the fans. We needed a little bit element of fitness in there too. So these are all ways that we kind of score things. And we had a whole additional scorecard looking at the visuals and a lot of the content being created as well. Okay. So think a little bit broader than just raw reach, and actually take the effort to kind of to score this. And it's not the same score for every different campaign, right? It depends on the campaign, whether in this case, Robin would be a great fit or not. Brings us to new rule number 4. Develop relationships instead of transactions. A lot of the influencer networks that are affiliated with, some different retail outlets, like different stores, different companies, sometimes they have their own influencer network, and you can kind of purchase a post on those influencer networks. The problem with them is it tends to be pretty transactional. It's like, okay, you pay us enough, we'll post about it, then we're done. If you want to do something else with us, pay us again, we'll do more. And that kind of starts to sound pretty much like an ad buy, right? Like if I pay for this ad, I get this audience. If I don't pay for the ad, I don't get the audience. But when you develop relationships, one of the great things is that it's actually a two-way street. A relationship isn't a one-way street. So you start trying to figure out ways that you can help each other, that you can partner more, that you can do something really cool and interesting and special together. And that has great value, and that unlocks some of what is special about the influencer medium. So here is an example of what happens when you have a relationship. So we did some work with an influencer named Stephanie Barnhart, and we worked in 3 different capacities with her. So we had a Bowflex campaign that she worked on. We had a big budget for that, right? So we were able to do a lot more. We had the Laffy Taffy campaign, which was medium budget. So we still worked with her on that, even though it was very different budget than Bowflex. But we also worked with her on 3 Bridges, sort of their kind of new breakfast dish campaign. And they really had no budget, right? And so we just sort of helped each other out to make that campaign possible. So this is the same influencer. Because we have the relationship, we can engage in 3 totally different ways. It's not primarily based on the transaction value of how much money is exchanging. And there's many ways that we were also helping her just as much as she was helping us. So that's the power of, if you kind of want to see it really in action, of what having a relationship can do, because it isn't purely an economic transaction. Brings us to new rule number 5. Time your message to seize the moment. So I think where a lot of influencer marketing has evolved is really being something that is timely for what is going on right now. And I think there used to be, with a lot of companies, particularly those that are big companies that have annual marketing plans, you would plan these sort of marketing initiatives like a year in advance. And then by the time it would come, to that time, maybe, the conversation has shifted. The point of, view of the consumer has shifted. There's other things going on. So I think the new rule is, how do you get really, really relevant to the time dimension of what's happening right now? So the way I think about it is identify windows of opportunity. So for your product or for your service, are there drive periods, right? Where you're trying to drive, maybe it's a holiday drive period and you do that, or maybe it's counter-cyclical, right? You tend to sell a lot during the holidays, so you need to do it not in the holidays, right? Or is there an industry event? So maybe you're a B2B service company and there are some industry events and conferences that you need to anchor to. Or is there a viral trend? Something is just going on right now that is really trending that you just need to jump on. So I think that is sometimes the forgotten part, is that with influencer marketing, we sometimes start with just like, okay, which influencers do we want? As opposed to starting, what is relevant right now, or when this campaign will activate? What is the message and way that we jump on it? And then who are the influencers that can help us deliver that message, right? So don't forget that's sort of the timing. So here's an example of another campaign, Shady Brook Farms, whether it was Soup Week or Appetizer Week or Barbecue Week, we were kind of leveraging these special moments to kind of give a structure. And one of the things I wanted to kind of showcase is we actually believe in this so much that we built a platform for it. So our work on PR Hacker led us to create National Today. It's online at nationaltoday.com. So type in your browser, nationaltoday.com. And Jackson, if you don't mind sort of entering that in the chat room. What we basically did is we created the world's first viral holiday platform that basically aggregates all of these holidays, everything from National Margarita Day to National Tequila Day to National Love Your Pet Day to National Respect Your Cat Day to all of these, cause-related moments like Breast Cancer Awareness Month and all of that. So we aggregate that in the platform. We've become the most popular holiday platform in the world. We have typically about 5 million unique visitors per month. And those are all moments that can be activated around with your influencer campaigns. And then for National Today, we built our own influencer network of more than 4,000 influencers who just love to post about holidays and these special moments. And that can be really powerful as well. So you can kind of see here on the screen that we did something for a holiday we created, which was Better Breakfast Day, which we actually created. And then we also had moments like October holidays on our registry where people could see what kind of holidays are coming up and what's available, okay? So that brings us to new rule number 6, which is use blueprints to scale creativity. So use blueprints to scale creativity. And what I mean by blueprints, and this is the new rule, is that influencer campaigns and creative can follow different paradigms that can make you more effective. And the issue is that, for a lot of the influencer campaigns I can see by how they're structured that they're not set up to be effective. Sometimes I see they've got great influencers, it's a great brand, but just the structure of how it's set up with the creative execution isn't conducive to success. I can see like, oh, it'll be a cool campaign, but it won't drive real business results. So let me talk about some of the blueprints we use that can drive real business results. So first of all, we have a couple dozen different influencer blueprints. These are just basically proven campaign ideas that over time, they usually start with a specific campaign we did for a client, and then we start iterating on it, improving it, generalizing it, giving it a code name, and using it with multiple clients. So that's kind of how these influencer blueprints come about. And let me give you an example of what one looks like. So this one is called Fave Story, or Favorite Story. So every blueprint we have has a code name. This is Fave Story. It has a central question. So this is, what personal stories could our influencers share that would shine a special spotlight on our product or product category? And then it has a methodology for how to execute. So in this case, we invite influencers from different walks of life to tell visual and written stories related to our product or service. We coordinate with them to invite their fans or followers to share their own stories. And then we typically add some kind of incentive or coupon or discount or deal on top of that. So that's one paradigm to think of, is that basically what we do is we deliver our brand message, but through a unique and personal story as the vehicle for doing that. So that's one example of an influencer blueprint. Another one, local view. So how can our audience see life and the benefits of our brand from the unique local point of view of our influencers? So this is all about like a day in the life in their local area, in their community, right at that place, at that point in time. How can we experience the brand through that? So very typical will be, okay, we're going through, the hectic morning, of rushing off to work. And the influencer describing that, and then our brand is a piece of what makes all of that happen and work, and we show that role. So that's a different type of influencer blueprint. Or scavenger. This one I love because it's how can we create an interactive quest that supports the core messages of our brand. So we'll have our influencers search for something. That's another blueprint, another paradigm. Or challenge. What we do is we motivate influencers to actually use our product and services in the real world instead of talking about them. We challenge them to accomplish something. And sometimes we'll get influencers commenting on each other, right? Like influencer A will comment on how influencer B is doing with the challenge. Who will comment on influencer C. That's another blueprint, another paradigm. Photo wow. So oftentimes, because the most viral content is visual, we'll have an actual blueprint that will unearth those kind of like photos and those visual moments. And we'll be able to do that as well. Or create live. So we'll use the digital online medium as a streaming vehicle, and we'll have people share and let their audience feel like they're part of the brand's inner circle, right? So maybe what we'll do is instead of releasing, our new service or product or campaign, we'll have influencers co-create it with us and bring in their audience. So we're all part of the inner circle. This is something I love because in my prior career, I was an author, and that was a tactic that uses an author to get fans was you'd say, okay, here are 3 ideas for the next cover of my book. Which do you prefer? And we'd have people making suggestions, and you try to listen to those suggestions and sort of edit your cover to hear that, because then not only one, did the suggestions help your book cover get better, but 2, you could go back to all those people and say, thank you for all of your hard work and your input. Now the book is out. Look at this glorious cover. Shouldn't you get a copy now as well? So create live is a powerful one. And a couple more that I love, remember when. So if any kind of brand has emotions that are from the past, we will sort of target retro feelings and brainstorm. Do you remember that time? And we'll use that to relate to our brand. Hence the cassette tape there. And finally, join cause. So we'll actually orient things around a positive cause or positive social change. And actually, if there is cause related, if it's the right cause that resonates with the right influencer, we've seen lots of influencers that might even be celebrities that will actually join if that cause is structured in the right way, and it can be a powerful influencer campaign as well. So those are a sampling of the blueprints. And actually, Jackson, if you don't mind entering, in the link, I'll give it at the end, but in the chat, if you want to download some of those blueprints and this slide presentation, we'll make a link available where you can download those and you can get the slides from this presentation if those are helpful to you in structuring how you think about influencer campaigns. Brings us to new rule number 7, which is systematize the production process. So the old way kind of to sort of do this was it wasn't as much, maybe not as systematized as other parts of the sort of marketing plan, right? You would kind of just like, okay, say, we're gonna, discover some influencers, we're gonna get some, we're gonna kind of coordinate on our launch date, and we're gonna go. Instead, we like to think there's a few more steps. So here is an example of an 8-week systemized influencer campaign process. Week 1, that's when we might go in and do a kind of thorough search of a sort of best fit influencers and kind of start with that search. This is already assuming that we worked out the timing, we know our campaign was about, we know our message. So we might start in week 1 with discovery. Then week 2, we reach out to lots of those influencers and get them excited about what we're doing. Then week 3, we'll create. So we'll often provide sample content and sort of give feedback to influencers and help them create as we go into week 3. So what we kind of want to do is not tell them what to do, but we want to help them express themselves in an easier way that aligns with our brand. Then we might have 4 weeks of the activation period. That's 4 weeks where we're going live, and we might kind of script that out so it's sort of the right sequence and influencers can coordinate with each other. And then finally, we'll report and we'll do that. So what I wanted to kind of say is this has sort of the campaign cadence of any kind of other marketing discipline. And so we like to kind of bring that rigor and so by the way, this can be compressed. So we've done the same steps right here in 4 weeks instead of 8 weeks. I mean, heck, we've actually done it in 2 weeks when we had to, because we really had to activate fast. So, but this gives you kind of like an idea of what sort of like a best in class kind of campaign rollout looks like. Brings us to point number 8. And Jackson, I know you believe a lot in sort of authentic self-expression for influencers. Is there anything you want to add to this point before I jump in, or any comments or questions? Because the new rule is new rule 8, number 8, encourage authentic self-expression.
Yeah, I think this really ladders back well to a comment that I think it was John who made. John said, in choosing an influencer, I look for consistency in content message across multiple pieces of content. That's the authenticity that shows that an influencer is connecting to their audience. If there's no consistent voice, your brand message might appear forced and will fail to resonate with a larger audience. So, and he says, I also look for those with strong community building skills. So I actually really love this one, because I think that the temptation, particularly for marketers who are new to influencer marketing, is to try and like really control the creative process for the influencers to an excessive degree, right? And then all of a sudden,
exactly. I want you to say this. You need to say this exact thing, that my service is the greatest service in the world, and you need to say it just like this, because that's what I want.
Totally. And audiences can smell that inauthenticity from a mile away, right? And it comes off as inauthentic, and it doesn't convert, right? So ultimately, there's got to be some give and take there. You have to be prepared to trust influencers and trust that they know their audience best, and give some of the creative vision and sort of artistic license to them.
Right. And so the idea is that you can specify the message and the voice that it needs to be, because that needs to align with your brand, but then how they get there. So put it this way, it's like giving them a destination on the road, right? Like, we're going to drive to Houston. So we need to get to Houston, but there's like a few different roads we can take. Like, do we go down the super highway? Do we take the back roads? Do we stop off? You know, if we're driving from Austin, let's go stop off at that like great Czech bakery on the way, and then come back in, right? So you give them some freedom in how they get there, but they'll still get to the same place, and it's within, to make the campaign have meaningful ROI. You can specify where it needs to go, but then give them some room to be authentic. And so here is one more stat I want to present, which is 61% of consumers say that authenticity is the most important quality in an influencer. So the issue is that if you control it too much and you don't give them an ability to be authentic, you actually have just negated the number one quality that your audience values. So you just lost a lot of value of the campaign if you did that, right? And so here is an example of some work we did that was kind of promoting egg bites, which is kind of a sort of a kind of fluffy, high protein, low carb breakfast. And one of the things we did was that we gave guidelines, but we didn't give strict controls of creative. And as a result, kind of cool things happen. So one, you can see on the right, egg bites kind of was sort of expressed in a really creative medium and sort of artistic way that we hadn't envisioned. And that was really cool. And that came out of something by not controlling that, oh, you must show the product this way. No, like they came and they made, a cute picture with that. And on the other side, on some of our work with Laffy Taffy, part of what we were doing is laddering into jokes, and we kind of gave dads the ability to tell their dad jokes in the way that they wanted. And even though that post doesn't look real, like super polished, right? But it is authentic, and it actually did great with his audience because we didn't try to make it the most polished looking kind of like ad-like execution in the world. So those are some of the things that can happen. And what happens is when you release a little bit of that control, let it be a little authentic, sometimes great stuff and unexpected things happen. Both of these posts were actually great outcomes for the brand. New rule number 9, give your audience a reason to engage. Give your audience a reason to engage. And one of the points, and if you've turned to some of the webinars, you've heard me speak about some of these kind of principles of what makes an idea want to spread. And I would sort of say there are whatever we could brainstorm, there are 3, they fall in 3 categories. And that is 1, an idea has to be simple. So if it's an influencer campaign, it cannot be overly complex. Why? Because it's hard to share it. It's hard for our audience to share it if it's very complex to understand and it takes a lot of explanation. So it's got to be simple. It's got to be surprising. So we think we've all seen it before. Oh yeah, this is another one of those kind of companies or brands or products or influencer campaigns. So you got to do something that's outside of the norm. And then 3, it's got to be significant. It's got to say something deeper of more important. So the idea here, and just to kind of go back to the new rule, which is give your audience a reason to engage. And you can often give them that by making your campaign ideas more simple, more surprising, and more significant. So here's an example from our head of influencer relations, Patrick, of a campaign he did that sort of, I thought, embodied that. So he was the creator, and maybe some of you saw this, of the Cheerios challenge. And it was a simple and surprising and significant way for dads to engage. And actually, it started with him. And we'll have him on another one of these webinars soon, stacking kind of Cheerios on his baby's forehead. And then he sort of shared that, and other people started doing it, so much so that eventually President Obama was doing it on this stuffed animal here as well. And it won a Cannes Lions for this campaign. And actually, from our lens of, is it simple? Yeah, pretty easy to understand what is interesting or funny about this. I'm just looking at it. Is it surprising? Yeah, hadn't seen anything quite like this done in this manner. Was it significant? Absolutely, because there was a deeper message here, which was actually about, sort of celebrating dadhood, and that dads and spending special times with your babies have a special bond. And the humor, while kind of silly and funny, was also a way to kind of ladder to, that sort of that humorous and fun aspect to dads with their kids. That is really special. So all of those things are ways, and then that campaign had great engagement, a lot of people doing this, because we gave audiences, and really Patrick gave audiences a reason to engage by making it simple, surprising, and significant. Brings us to new rule number 10. Measure results and reward performance. So the old way used to be, one, it was less kind of measurement oriented. And if you did measure, it was vanity metrics, right? Metrics that just kind of sound big, but didn't really sort of mean anything. And 2, you were kind of done, right? Like, oh, you engage with these people. If it was a paid campaign, you paid them, right? It was done. And so I think the new rule is, let's measure better to understand what is really working. And when something is really working, let's not just stop with that campaign. Let's reward. Let's, incentivize. Like we will, if influencer camp is doing a great job, we'll just send them gifts out of the blue in the mail, or we'll try to get them in a special opportunity with something else that we think will benefit their own personal brand, or we'll find other ways to do it. So here is an example, and this is some of the examples that kind of how we track, results in real time so we can deliver more results. And the key is that instead of being like, let's do all this work, let's do one massive campaign and then we're done till next year, next season. Instead, we'll do much more smaller campaigns at a higher cadence, and we'll learn and improve, we'll measure, and we'll get better and better and better. So if you're doing this as an influencer program, what I can encourage you to think about is, it's like influencer program 1.0, 1.1, 1.2, 2.0, 2.1, 3.0, 4.0. It starts to sound like almost like a software release, right? But the benefit of that as a methodology is you're constantly making small increments to get better and better over time. And by the time you're on iteration 10 of your influencer program, you've come a long way in understanding the message and understanding the effectiveness and driving to a result. And are we trying to drive, links to this landing page? And are we trying to, accomplish this by getting sort of trial? You're getting more skilled at working with influencers and truly partnering with them. So measure results, do it frequently. And when you get good results, reward, acknowledge, and that's somehow you deepen that relationship and that partnership. So I'm gonna pause there for a second, and I know we're about out of time. I kind of want to have one little surprising little game we'll play. It will just take 3 minutes, and I think we'll kind of open to your eyes to a few surprising stats about influencers, and then I want to end on the final thought of the day and sort of how to, talk to me if you have questions, engage with us as well. I can mention all of that. But Jackson, any final thoughts, comments, or questions from the chat channel before I kind of go into the influencer game, and the most important thought of the day.
The last question that we have unanswered, and maybe, Frank, I'll have to invite you to take this one offline. He asked if we often use Facebook ads for retargeting. The answer is yes, but that is a whole other can of worms we may not have time for today. So you're going to see that you have an opportunity to ask Ben questions. Also, if you scroll back in the chat, you'll be able to see my own Calendly link, so you can book time with me as well if you want to ask further questions. But otherwise, I think we're good for questions.
Okay, sounds great. And then just the quick thing is, yes, absolutely. Sometimes we'll actually retarget on Facebook from other mediums that are more expensive. Sometimes that could even be included in an influencer program, because if we were given the ability to track a pixel and know who's engaged with something, then we could retarget them. It is a big topic, but I think generally what we try to do is try to find the most cost-efficient way to retarget and stay top of mind. So oftentimes we'll have more expensive channels where we bring people in, and then retarget on a less expensive, more targeted channel like a Facebook. So that's a good question. So here's the influencer game. Let's play this, and feel free to type in the chat room your answer for each of these questions. And then this will give you some insight about influencers, and then I will end with the most important thought of the day and my biggest piece of advice to get effective influencer marketing campaigns done. So this is the influencer game. And actually, oops, let me just jump over here. Here's the questions. We have a series of questions. You got option A or option B. So which dudes have greater social reach? What I'm saying is, what is the greater reach of these influencers? Matt LeBlanc of Friends, actor, star, and the guys of Dude Perfect, which is kind of a pretty prolific kind of group of influencer, sort of like influencer team. Who do you think has the greater social reach? So you can lock that in online in the chat. And actually, Jackson, I think you don't even know the answer to this. So Jackson, you want to take a guess?
Well, I trust the judgment of the chat, and the consensus seems to be B.
B, Dude Perfect. They're sensing where I'm going with this. The answer is B. Dude Perfect has 9.9 million Instagram fans, while the Friends star Matt LeBlanc has pretty respectable 3.5 million. So the point is that, just because someone's a celebrity doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, they necessarily have a big audience. Some of these influencers have surprisingly big audiences. I think some of our audience caught on to that, and especially with the new rules and the multiple tiers and multiple influencers is one of our principles. Here's another quick one. Which comedian is more expensive to hire? Terry Crews or Jim Gaffigan? I want to give you a sense of what celebrity influencers cost if you haven't done this kind of work before. What do you think? Terry Crews or Jim Gaffigan of Hot Pockets fame, and Terry Crews on a number of kind of funny shows, seen in different movies as well. Jackson, are people locking in their answers, and what do you think? Who's more expensive to hire if you want to hire them as a celebrity?
Mia, John, and Ryan all agree it's Terry.
Terry Crews. Okay, and the answer is, oh, it's Jim Gaffigan. We actually needed to hire them for a campaign, so we actually talked to their managers. Jim Gaffigan was commanding about $1 million fee to work on an influencer campaign. Terry Crews, pretty solid $600,000. But the point is that celebrities can play an important role in your campaign, and we are a big celebrity endorsement agency. We do that. But sometimes you can get that effect by looking at macro and micro and nano influencers too, and how you pull them together. Just a couple more questions to wrap up, which is, which viral photo had more comments? I don't know if you remember these, Jackson, but they were kind of like these kind of memes that kind of photo memes that went viral. One was tired nurse after a long day, A. The second was Matt from Walmart. I don't know if you remember, they just had a unique style and look. And which do you think, they both kind of went viral, but which viral photo had more comments, more engagement? What do you think? And what does the audience think? The audience is stumped. I can sort of see it there. What do you think?
John's coming in with Matt from Walmart. Ryan saying tired nurse, tired nurse, tired nurse. I don't know. It's hard to say. I'm going to think,
okay.
Matt from Walmart.
Okay, let's see. It's tired nurse. Both photos did well, but tired nurse had 17,000 comments, probably due to its emotional connection, which was even deeper, as there's a lot of emotion in that photo. And the point I wanted to make here is that social media marketing, viral marketing, influencer marketing, it's in part a visual medium. So can you communicate things? And sometimes it doesn't have to be a fancy photo to communicate something, right? And finally, this question here, if you remember the ice bucket challenge, how many people did the ice bucket challenge? This was really an influencer campaign because he had a lot of celebrity influencers like Bill Gates dumping buckets of water on his head. What do you think? How many people did that? 17 million or 100 million? Any ideas? What kind of scale was that as an influencer campaign?
We have 2 for 17 million, 1 for 100 million, 2 for 100 million, 3 for 100 million. You know, chat, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to guess it's 17 million, but a very visible 17 million.
There you go. 17 million. There you go. So that's how many people did it. Was its reach a lot higher than that? Absolutely. But sometimes, so the point is that it's not just measured on like participants and something like that, but it had a reach in the hundreds of millions of people. But it actually, was a huge campaign, but it wasn't necessarily as big as you thought to be this sort of huge viral phenomenon.
If only 17 million people did it, Ben, is it even viral?
Okay. Well, it is, and I love this picture of Bill Gates doing it. So there you go. He had to have it, the contraption built. So let me kind of wrap up with the kind of the final thought of the day. I'm going to kind of go back up here and and actually show, if you want to find out more, there's a few things you can do for resources. So one, subscribe to my YouTube channel because if this was useful to you, I am actually, and here, I'll just pull it up on the screen here if you can see this. Let's see, it's the YouTube channel here. This is what it looks like. And basically, there's all kinds of tutorials, certainly webinars, webinar snippets we're doing here, but lots of other different kind of marketing tactics. This is a whole series on how to go viral and viral velocity. You can sort of see a lot here. So if you want kind of the latest, go to the YouTube channel and subscribe. And if you don't know how to get there, one, there's a little, Jackson, if you don't mind posting that in the channel, that's actually the link. You can also just Google like YouTube Ben Kaplan and use a title like YouTube Ben Kaplan Pivot Don't Pause, which is one of mine that's real popular. So do that, and we'll post it in the channel, the YouTube channel there as well. So that's one way. And then second, there is a page that you can download the slide deck and receive these influencer marketing blueprints. So if you go to events.benkaplan.com/ and just new rules of influencer marketing with hyphens in between, and we can post that in the chat as well if you don't mind, Jackson. Then just fill out the short form there, and we'll send you the kind of slide deck and the blueprints, and hopefully that can be helpful as well. So we'll get that in there in the chat room as well. And in Jackson, if you need those links, it's also in our kind of Slack chat as well. You can pull those from there if you need to get the actual links. And then,
now.
What's that? Oh, sorry.
Oh, posting them right now.
Right now. Okay, great.
And then if you want the slides, the web page that Ben has up right now is the place you want to go. And I just dropped the link in the chat. So be sure you click over there so you can get the slides from today's presentation.
Yes, and then finally, if you want to message me or you have questions like what, you can reach me at ben.kaplan@prhacker.com. Like I said, we have actually 10 different agencies, so I have a lot of email addresses, but we have different agencies such as, that are focused on certain topical areas like top health, top education, top tech. We have other agencies that are designed for certain categories of companies like top B2B that focus on B2B brands. We have others that focus on creative, like Top Creative as another agency, and we have PR Hacker, which is sort of a new, more viral PR and influencer marketing agency as well. So you can email me at ben.kaplan@prhacker.com, and Jackson, you added your Calendly link to the chat. Jackson has amazing experience in this, is actually a great resource, and we work closely on a lot together. So Jackson would be a great resource as well. And then finally, a couple other things. If you want to tweet at me at Benjamin Kaplan, and every time I do a webinar, and I always ask, what is the one thing? So what is the one thing today that you found most useful, most interesting, most memorable, most provocative? Because we like to spread ideas, I always like to know, what is that one idea that sticks with you? So let me know, tweet at me at Benjamin Kaplan, I'll respond. And that would be of great help to me to know what is most sticky from this presentation. And then finally, before I wrap up, LinkedIn, if you want to connect with me, just send me a network request, and say you attended my webinar, because I always accept those that say they attended my webinar. And if you want an easy way to do this, hold up your phone, go to the LinkedIn app and go to the search bar, and where that arrow is, click that little QR code icon. And then if it's a little network hack, you can choose scan a QR code. And if you hold it up to your computer screen right now, it will take you directly to that page without you having to enter. It's great, by the way, at conferences and stuff like that. You can just show each other's QR codes and then connect that way as well. And Jackson, you can also add, if you don't mind, the LinkedIn link to the chat as well. So let me end on the final kind of thought of the day. And this is a recap of what we've accomplished today, but then there's kind of one more 11th kind of new rule. And so we've learned today that new rule, leverage groups over individuals, right? You can pool people and get a better fit for the audiences you want to reach. New rule, layer multiple influencer tiers, right? So there can be macro, micro, nano, maybe a celebrity, maybe not, but work in multiple levels. New rule, score your targets on key objectives. So it's not just vanity metrics. It's not just raw reach. Look at it and score it really efficiently. Write it down. New rule, develop relationships instead of transactions. So don't turn influencer marketing into just a form of transactional advertising. Develop a relationship and you'll get more results, and it will be a lot more fun. New rule, time your message to seize the moment. So really look at what will be most relevant at this moment in time. Be relevant to that moment in time as the starting point for your campaign. New rule, use blueprints to scale creativity. So these kind of campaigns that are very effective tend to follow certain patterns. We've named them. So remember, fave story or local view or challenge, and use those as structures to execute creative for an influencer campaign. New rule, systemize the production process. So it's not just like, yeah, let's get a bunch of influencers, yeah, let's have them post stuff, but actually develop a very systematic process that you can iterate over time and improve. New rule, encourage authentic self-expression. So don't try to control the message so tightly when you're doing influencer marketing that you don't let the influencers express themselves, because some of the greatest moments and most ROI you'll have comes from that authenticity. And remember, the #1 quality audiences value in influencers is their authenticity. If you remove it, then you're losing a lot of the value of working in this medium from the beginning. New rule, give your audience a reason to engage. Remember the Cheerios on the baby's forehead? Simple, surprising, significant. And you can have more effective campaigns that way. And finally, new rule of influencer marketing, measure results and reward performance. Measure at a faster cadence, learn and iterate. My agency TOP stands for test, optimize, and perform. You can test, optimize, and perform in your influencer campaigns, iterate quickly, and get better. And then when you get a great result, reward influencers, celebrate them, thank them, send them a special gift, develop the relationship, and that will pay a lot of dividends in the short, medium, and long term. So the final thing I'll say, these are 10 new rules of influencer marketing. And if you are on the sidelines of this, now is the time to jump in the game. Right now, there's a lot of influencers that are eager to work on different campaigns. If you've dabbled in this and just set your foot in the water, you touch your toes in the water a little bit, now's the time to kind of deepen your work in influencer marketing. And if you look at the number of searches over time of people searching about influencer marketing, it is continuing to move like a J curve. So we're only deepening the importance of this as a medium. Now's the time. And if you're already big in influencer marketing, now is the time to optimize and get better and follow these new rules. So wherever you are in the process, don't worry. You don't have to do it all tomorrow, but try to get incrementally better in your campaigns. Try to start adding more groups of influencers. Start thinking about more tiers, trying to drive more engaging creative. And this will pay off, because I think in 5 or 10 years from now, I mean, already influencer marketing is a term that every company around the world knows and uses. But 5 or 10 years from now, the little secret is that influencer marketing may actually become one of the top 3 most dominant marketing channels and most important marketing channels in our toolkit. So the more you can do now will not only position you to succeed now, but 10 years from now, you're going to be much, much better off as this becomes a core pillar stone of marketing programs. And the reason it will be like that is because as we have more noise, as we have more content, more distribution, we start to need people to sift through the noise and know who to listen to. And that's the role of an influencer to help us do that. So I'm Ben Kaplan. Hopefully this was useful to you. Thank you to Jackson Carpenter for kind of helping be our kind of MC and comment curator. Please contact me. Let me know if you have any questions. Tweet at me at Benjamin Kaplan, your one thing. Let me know about that. And I wish you all that kind of success. Cheers.
Thanks.